Now the IS is a completely different story. You get the same gun from the KV-1S, but you get much better armor too. Looking at the front, we're just going to start at the lower plate and go right up like we have been doing. Now we're moving on up in the world. At tier 8, we have the IS-3. Whole armor, it has 110 millimeters, but don't let it fool you. We'll see why in a little bit. 90 millimeters on the side, and only 60 on the rear. With its upgraded turret, it has 249 millimeters on the front, 172 on the sides, and 100 on the rear. But with that rather sloped turret, it'll be interesting to see what the numbers are. So, if you haven't noticed already, the IS-3 is a little bit different. It has something called the pike nose, where its armor is already angled for you, so you don't have to angle it like many other tanks. So, looking at it, IS-3, straight on paper, the armor is supposed to be 110 millimeters, but we can clearly see it is much better than that. All the way upwards of 200 depending on where you shoot. Obviously the weakest place is going to be where the two plates meet, but still you're dealing with 160, 170 millimeters of armor to go through. And again, it's the same on this side, 200. Bottom, it's not strong, but with the angle it's at, it's very good. 250 millimeters of armor, it looks like you will need to penetrate it at this angle. So it's going to be very tough to penetrate the front of the IS-3. Now you do want to be careful though. This little triangle right here, you never ever want to shoot there. That is spaced armor. The same thing goes for over here. It's all spaced armor. You'll penetrate, you won't do any damage. So you need to be careful with that. And again with this port right here, you'll penetrate it. You may knock out the observation device, but it's not going to do any damage. And let's look at the turret. On paper, it has 249 millimeters of armor in the front. But, as you can see, it is very well rounded, really sloped. And with that slope, it's just insane. A lot of ricochet over here. Don't shoot on the very side, of course. Even right here, 280 millimeters of penetration is what you'll need to get through. It's a very strong turret. And the gun mantlet, 400, 900. There's no gun in the game that can penetrate that. Of course, you do have your weak spot where the turret ring is, but it's very small. It's going to be hard to hit. If you're a big tank, try shooting at this right here. Even angle a little bit. It's only 40 millimeters of armor. So like if an IS-3 is trying to face hug you, just shoot at that top plate. You're not getting through that turret. And the sides, you do have to be careful because all along here, it's spaced armor. So that means you have to have at least 170, some areas even more, to penetrate it. So that again goes to this, don't shoot at this area because that is spaced armor going all the way back. It's going to be hard to hit them IS-3 on the sides because this is all the tank you got to shoot. If you shoot anywhere down here, nothing. There's no tank down there. The tank stops right there. And you have to go through tracks, depending on where you shoot. 130, 90, depends on where you shoot. If you have the side, shoot down there. Because again, with this turret, very, very well armored. If you can hit that little hatch on top, do it. Another thing, that don't shoot the machine gun. It's not going to do anything. For the rear, yeah, it's just like the IS. No armor on the rear. Between 60 and 70 millimeters, anything should be able to penetrate that easy. Unless you're like a really, really low tier. Which you shouldn't be getting into matches with IS-3s if you're in tiers as low as that. But again, with this turret, just watch where you shoot, since it is well rounded. Some areas are more armored than others, but if anything, shoot at this flat area. There is a little weak spot around here. You can try shooting at that. And up top, it's less armored as well. You can shoot these gas cans. They will do damage. May even catch them on fire or something. Artillery players, if you're shooting an ISV from the top, you're pretty much going to penetrate. As long as it's a well-aimed shot. If you shoot anywhere on the turret around here, probably only going to do a little bit of splash damage. Up here, 20. Here, it's all 20. Even in the Hummel, at tier 6, the artillery, I have hit an IS-3 back here, and it did full damage. Did about 900 damage or so to an IS-3, and I was only in a tier 6. So, that's it for the IS-3. Let's go on to the IS-8. Moving up to tier 9, we have the IS-8 with 120 hull armor on the front, 80 on the sides, and 60 in the rear. With the upgraded turret, you have 201 millimeters on the front, 148 on the sides, 50 on the rear. Now those may seem small, but again, with the very sloped turret, we'll see what Tank Inspector has to say about it. The IS-8, just like its predecessor, has the pike nose again, so you want to be going face on, pointing your armor straight at the enemies. But the IS-8 does have a bigger lower glacis plate, and it less angled than the IS-3. It's going to be a little bit harder to bounce shells if you're driving one of these. So it looks like max is going to be 225 all the way at the bottom. If you're shooting up here, 215-ish. You should be fine there. As for the pike nose, much better than the IS-3s. We can get up 260s. So again, if you have to, shoot where these two plates join. That's going to be your best chance of doing anything. And right here on this little port, I haven't been shot there before. I don't know if it does any damage, or if it's just like the IS-3 and just bounces, but it might do some damage depending on where you hit. IS-8's turret armor on paper is less than the IS-3, but we can see it's just as good because of that sloping. So you'll have to shoot pretty close to this gun mantlet without hitting the gun mantlet, and you're still going to need probably 250 plus penetration to do anything. As for the mantlet, yeah, just look at these numbers. No gun in the game, again, can get through this. 648 millimeters of armor. No one's getting through that. If anything, You could always shoot at the turret ring. It's a small target, but if you got nothing else to shoot at, for the side, this right here appears to not do any damage to the tank if you shoot there. And all along here, it gets stronger as you go to the front. So shoot towards the back, around where these ladders are. Looks to be the weakest. You're probably not going to be able to hit that hatch on top, so I wouldn't even try. And spaced armor on the sides, which means you don't want to shoot anywhere in this triangle. Just like the IS-3 had a triangle on its side, don't shoot the IS-8 and the triangles on the side. Spaced armor, you'll probably bounce. Shooting the sides of the IS-8 is going to be a little difficult. 240s, 230s, so you're going to have a high penetrating gun if you want to get through the sides. Most tier 8s can't easily go through this. Some of the tank destroyers can, but most tanks cannot. If you have to shoot at the side, shoot down here. That's your best chance. Only 130 is what it maxes out at, even with the tracks. But again, with IS-8, just like the IS-3, there's not much tank to shoot at. So you want to shoot up here. Don't shoot down where these big wheels are. Only where the little ones are. Moving to the back. Only 60-ish millimeters of armor on the back of the turret. You can easily get through that. 70s, 80s is what it looks like for the rear. So if you're at the back of an IS-8, shoot at the turret. It's the weakest spot. You're pretty much guaranteed penetration. For artillery, if you're shooting on the turret, you need to be careful again. But most of it's 40 millimeters. And as for the hole, it's only about 30. Unless you're shooting over here, then it's a little more, but it's still doable. If you're shooting at the back of the IS-8, you should be able to do massive amounts of damage to them. So that wraps it up for the IS-8. Let's move on to our final tank of the day. Last but not least, we come to the Tier 10 IS-7. On the front hull, it has 150 millimeters of armor, and it looks like the sides have the same. But on the rear, we only have 100 millimeters. The turret, though, has 240 frontal armor, 185 on the sides, with 94 on the rear. I find the IS-7 pretty difficult to penetrate if you don't know what you're doing, that is. It is very well armored in the front, very angled, with that pike nose again. The lower glacis, pretty weak, compared to the rest of the tank, that is. But it's still strong. 240s, it looks like is what you're going to need to penetrate the lower glacis. As for the actual whole armor, the upper glacis, that is a much different story. Even shooting at the weld joints, you have to have massive amounts of penetration just to get through it. 270s, 300s, it's going to be tough. As we move over, bunch of armor, 300s. The same for on the side here. It's a very tough tank. And again, we have these triangles of spaced armor where you do not want to shoot. Never shoot the IS-7 in that triangle, just as the IS-8 and the IS-3. There is spaced armor on the sides. Be careful. So on paper, the hull has 150 millimeters on the front. With that angle, we can see those numbers are just huge. The turret has 240 millimeters of armor on paper, but again, it has that very well-angled turret front, making it much more difficult to penetrate. This gun mantlet, again, it's going to be difficult to penetrate. You may get lucky sometimes, but yeah, 900 infinity is so high there. Yeah, you're not going to penetrate that. So pretty much from the front, the IS-7 is very, very strong. You don't want to be meeting one of those up front. If they know what they're doing, it's going to be tough. But if he doesn't know what he's doing, he's coming around corners like this, you can easily penetrate him. Most tier 9s even can penetrate this. For the sides, the turret, again, it's very strong. You're going to need about 230 if you want to penetrate back here. 250, and even at that, you might not be penetrating him. And down here with the spaced armor, you're going to have more than 260 in some places just to penetrate him on the side. Again, you can shoot him down here between this section of armor and the tracks. Only about 100, depending on where you're shooting at. But again, be careful, because you might not hit the tank if you're shooting at the tracks. So you need to watch for that. As for the rear, about 120 with all the sloping, 90s, 100s on the back, and the back of the turret's surprisingly well in some areas. So if you have to shoot the back, shoot at this little thing right here. Back of the turret. At this point in time, you should have a tank that's able to penetrate with only 100 millimeters of armor. And down here, it's very weak as well. So that's about it for the IS-7. That's going to wrap up this video and the IS series. So the next video, I hope to cover the KV series. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to subscribe for more, and we'll see you guys later.